Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us. My name is Tiffany Ann Louie. I'm Chief Marketing Officer here at World Trade Center, Utah. Glad to be able to welcome you to this week's trade and tariff briefing. It's been a busy week, and today's a big day, so we appreciate you joining us. We have a stellar lineup today. First up is our mainstay, Ben Kolendar, with an update on the ever-changing tariff dashboard. We're continuing to update this in real time to help your businesses stay ahead of shifting landscapes. Then we'll hear from Phillip Poel, Senior Vice President of Global Supply Chain at Traeger Grills. He'll be sharing thoughtful insights on the hidden opportunity of tariffs. We're really excited to have Phil. He's been really great to be a resource for us this past several months as we've been navigating all this together. Ben, screen is yours.
Thanks, Tiffany. And also want to note we had last week off for the Utah holiday. And so glad you can join us. We're going to have a couple of updates from this week, and it will carry into last week as well. So we're going to move quickly through some of the tariff dashboard updates so we can get to the great content that Phil has for us today. And as always, I'd just like to remind our audience that this dashboard is available to everyone upon just basically going to wtcutah.com/tariffs. I say that every week and I still can't get it down. But we have all of the updates we're going to go over here today on our website. And so uh, please head to the website and follow along with us if you'd like. So I'm going to start by just going from the top. And I'd also like to invite Phil to jump in and sort of have a back and forth on each one of these because I'm going to do the high level of each one of these tariffs. But it's so great to have Phil on board because he's so in the details of a lot of these tariffs going on that he may have some unique perspectives to share on these. The first is Canada. So the big update here is that the 35% tariff went into effect. So this was a pretty quick turnaround from executive order into the tariff implementation. We saw um, the effective date for that was this morning.
Mhm.
So again, this is not going to include the USMCA goods, but all goods that are not USMCA, anything that is a lower 10% on tariff for energy that is still benchmarked at the same. So that's a Canada tariff. Phil, anything to add on that one? Any perspective?
I would say, Ben, our north and southern border, how this is playing out, at least behind the curtain with the administration right now, I do think there's wiggle room. That is not a forward-looking statement, but there feels like there is still some room to play with regard to that on conversations that are happening, and whether that lands at down to 30 or 25. But that one doesn't seem quite as solid as maybe the other ones in the Asiana Rim. So just soft guidance there.
That's great. And it's a good reason to keep up to date with their dashboard as well, because as these updates become available, we'll update our dashboard and those updates will be available for our community in an organized way as well. Um, the next one, and this is a big one. This is a global IEEPA tariff. Many remember this from the April 2nd deadline, had all the countries listed, all the different tariff rates. So you can see right here, the implementation date is for August 7th from the executive order that was released last night. Um, so these, you can see all the resources that you will need. If you want to see country-specific rates, you just click that link and you can scroll down. You see like Brazil, the European Union will be captured in here with the variances there that we'll go over in a minute as well. But basically has a rundown of each country and the rates that are set for those countries based off the executive order last night. Anything to add there on that one, Phil?
Um, I,
There's so much to
yeah,
unpack.
so much. It is Friday morning tariff day, so we have a lot to talk about, I'm sure. So
Yeah, and we're also going to accept some Q&A from the audience. So if there are specific questions that the audience has as we run through this, feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we will get to those when we can. Um, the global tariff on copper, the 232, the one that was initially at 25%, raised to 50%. The effective date was August 1st today, so that tariff went into effect this morning at 12:01 a.m. All the documents you'll need are right here in our resource link, including CSMS that has all the details that that are informing customs on the enforcement of that tariff. So take a look at those if you're impacted by tariffs. Phil, anything on copper?
That's a big switch. I that one I've been so focused on the steel side, so
Yeah.
that one's that in the 232 and what we were able to affect here recently. But yeah, that's a jump for everyone for sure.
And I think your comments that are coming up on your briefing are going to be insightful across the board, but include some of these 232s as well. So we'll get to that here in just a minute. But the next big one up is the Mexico tariff. So the big announcement here is the 90-day window starting yesterday, which lands around October 30th on the pause to further negotiate tariffs. This would again be similar to Canada, be on the non-USMCA goods. This was let out at 25%, and then there was a threat for 30%, and now there's a pause. This pause is from the 25 to 30% increase for 90 days while the administration continues negotiation with Mexico. So for now, Mexico status quo today through at least October 30th while these tariffs are negotiated.
Mhm.
Anything to add there, Phil?
One point, and you will see it in the annex that was released last night on the transshipment. There's a lot of talk around that one. I would only throw up a yellow flag to people. Be careful with regard to Mexico and how much goods are flowing into Chinese companies, and that they are truly transformational in Vietnam or in Mexico, and not just being transshipped in. The penalties are high, so cautionary
That's
on
right.
that side.
Higher than the tariff itself. So if you
100%. Yep.
if that comes through in terms of enforcement on transshipment of your goods, you're going to face a higher tariff altogether.
Correct. Yep.
That's a great point. Next up is the European Union. So this is an interesting one in terms of, and this is also a reminder that you can go to our deals page here at the top. The main page we brief off of here is the tariffs dashboard, but we are also tracking the deals that come through. European Union right here reached a deal, and so this is involving that as well. But there were a lot of standalone threats and conversations with the EU, so it warranted their own tariff line item in the tariff dashboard. So this tariff is 15%. So if you have a most favored nation status on your goods and they're below 15%, now with the EU, they come up to 15%. If they are above 15%, they're status quo. So it basically raises the threshold of a minimum MFN tariff coming from the EU to 15% across the board. Anything to add to that one? I know there's so many that we could expand into for that, but that's about, yeah, that's the brief update on the EU. Brazil, I feel like we could do a webinar on each one of these line items. But moving on to Brazil, the executive order was issued on July 30th to impose a 40% tariff on Brazil. This is in addition to the 10% global IEEPA tariff on Brazil. And that is where it stands as of last night on the tariffs that were issued for Brazil. Although we understand that this is still something that is in negotiations because that date is set for October 5th for some of those tariffs to be negotiated. I think that is the implementation date on the additional 40% while these discussions take place. There is a lengthy list of exemptions found in Annex 1, which is linked on our website. So just very briefly going into those, you can see how long the list of exemptions is. So if you're doing business in Brazil, I mean, I am scrolling this through really fast so that we don't take too much time on Brazil. But this is on the additional 40%. So if you are facing those, if you're doing business in Brazil, it would be good to go back and reference that if you're wondering if you're going to be impacted by this tariff. De minimis, should we go into de minimis? And Phil, you just stop me if we have anything to add to Brazil or any of these other ones as we go. De minimis, there was a suspension issued by presidential action to suspend all de minimis into the United States. This is a big one. So any goods valued at under $800 traditionally has been a loophole. It's been considered de minimis, and anything being shipped in just isn't charged a tariff. That's all changing. And so this closes that loophole globally. We have a lot more details on our website about this one, but obviously, if you're shipping something in under $800, plan on paying a tariff. And this impacts businesses, but this really impacts consumers to a large extent because consumers are used to just making orders and receiving their goods with no tariff associated. But this is a big one. Phil, anything to add on de minimis?
Yeah, it's very big, especially for all of the direct shipments that have been initiated factory direct to customers in the United States. So this is going to be again, a threshold of enforcement on how they're going to manage this.
I'm going to go through these next couple very quickly. India is another country that's been in the news a lot with a lot of discussion. So India received a 25% tariff in what was issued last night, which this says 8/1, that should be 8/7 for when that date goes into effect. And they also have been threatened for up to 100% additional tariff rate if there's not a ceasefire in Ukraine, which seems like how is that related to India? Well, there was a right here, or no, let's go down. There was one. Nope, this was it. Countries trading with Russia. So India was determined to be trading with Russia, and so these threats were issued. So that tariff comes from the next line item down that if you're, this is a pressure tactic to have Russia sort of come to the table and discuss a ceasefire in Ukraine. But India is potentially subject to that tariff. So stay tuned for more details on that as it unrolls. We will keep everyone posted. So did we really explain this doing business with Russia tariff? The last piece, okay, we had some updates on trucks for the CSMS. So those tariffs are set to go into effect. And we will be updating that here shortly with more details, but we have the CSMS link updated there. But the last big thing I'm going to talk about are the public comment sections on some of these 232 tariffs for unmanned aircraft systems and polysilicon and its derivatives. So these two tariffs are right now, they've launched an investigation and they are open for public comment right now. They're open until August 6th, which is only 5 days away. And that is important for our business community to go out and comment on these tariffs as soon as possible. Get on the Federal Register, look at if it applies to you. Some companies are sensitive about whether they publicly post, but when weighing that, it's really important to consider putting comment or having some feedback, even confidentially. There are some confidential options as well in the public comment section that you can link to. But the BIS and USTR are required to substantively respond to each comment that has substance to it, right? And there's some legalese behind that, but the short is it provides a potential legal recourse down the road if you provide comment and don't feel like that was adequately heard in the process. And so if you want some remedy down the road, if you are impacted, that gives you that outlet to potentially have that. All right, anything we're missing there, Phil, before we hand it over to you?
I think we're good. Thanks, Ben.
All
Ben,
right, I'm going to stop sharing.
before you stop sharing, we do have one question.
Oh,
You're good. Peter had asked, do any of these resource links easily identify if these new tariffs are stackable or not on top of the existing tariffs?
yeah, Phil, you want to take that one or should I?
Go ahead. I sent you the memo this morning, so.
Yeah, so it sort of is a case by case basis. So where you're looking at in terms of what your tariff is, what your country you're doing business in, I wish I could give a cleaner answer, but a lot of these, for example, will provide exemptions, but the exemptions are because there's a 232 tariff process underway, and so they don't want to stack it while that process is being worked out. But some of these are stacked. So one example is, we heard a lot before the negotiations with China about the 145% tariffs. Those were stacked tariffs, the 125 plus the 20% fentanyl. You're seeing something similar with Brazil on the 10% plus the 40% for the negotiating. So it's really case by case, and I wish I could give a simpler answer or explanation to that, but it's just not that simple. So it just depends on where you're doing business and what part you're importing on whether that, yeah, stacks or not.
Yep.
Any simpler way to describe that, Phil?
I would say from a guide standpoint, Ben, go to your country of origin, go to your HST code, go to the annex, and it should match you to your stack or no stack.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. I'm reading the question here for India as well. That's a good question. So the question is, India is about to be subject to a 25% tariff on its exports into the United States. Will this be added to the April baseline of 10%, adding up to 35%? My sense is no, that if it's a part of all this global IEEPA tariff. So when you negotiate off of that, you have the 10% baseline. And so if you go above that, it sort of includes the 10% traditionally, unless there's an exception called out to that. That's typically been the case.
yep.
Great. And we should move on to Phil's presentation, but Rayam, as we pull up Phil's slide, maybe we can get to some of these questions in terms of contact information, how to reach out to us. But the short is you can contact us through our website. There's a lot of resources, whether it's connecting with us about the foreign trade zone or looking at tools to export to other markets. You can reach out to us at World Trade Center on our website, World Trade or WTCUtah.com, and we would be happy to work with you on exploring other markets or going further in depth on any of these conversations. So with that, Phil, I don't want to take away from this. This is great guidance for business. We've gotten the high level. We want to leave as much time for you as possible. I'm going to go on mute.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everyone. Today's an interesting day. We've been dealing with this obviously since the understanding of the election and the direction that that was going to go. And so many different conversations, so many different twists. At many times, it felt like the whack-a-mole game and how we were all trying to get to an answer. Today, I believe we have somewhat of an answer, more than we've ever had, with regard to how tariffs will flip into duty, how that becomes then a trade policy that we have to work with, at least a framework. So, in thinking about today, I actually was flying home on the plane and I went, I could talk about tariffs, we could talk about the mitigation, and many of you have done, I think, a wonderful job with regard to how you have mitigated things. And instead of trying to rehash what we've done before and or trying to create a new pathway for people to mitigate the tariff, I want to take you down maybe a different way to think about your business and what the tariff opportunity, and I know you say opportunity and tariff, well, that doesn't make any sense, but there is something there. And as business leaders and as leaders of your organization, it's a chance that maybe we can look around the corner, using tariffs as a vaulting point, as a launch point to think differently. And by the way, this is no reflection on Traeger or any other company that I've worked for. It's more a reflection on, as a good business leader, collectively, this is an opportunity. And I'll share a few things as we start to get into this. So the mitigation, again, all of us have just talked this to death with regard to what we would do with regard to tariff sharing with our suppliers, with our partners in business. And that's been going up and down. It has for us in our business as well. If you're not familiar with first sale, I highly encourage you to do that. Obviously, that is an opportunity for you to reset your BOM cost and how the tariff will be implicated or affected, subjected to your products coming in. And if you have any questions on that, I'm sure Ben and the WTC can steer you towards people who can help. You can reach out to me as well through Ben, and I can share with that as well. Country of origin sourcing, that's what everybody's been playing with right now is where do you place your product? Is it going to be Thailand? Is it going to be Vietnam? Some products move easier than others. I was with Under Armour for a long time. I could move a t-shirt in a matter of weeks. I'm with Traeger Grills and we can't move a grill in weeks. It takes months and months with regard to our tooling and so on. But country of origin sourcing, obviously for mitigation, is a key element now that we have, I think, an even playing field or an understanding of the playing field in our trade. HTS reclassification, there is a lot of that going on. I've spent about 6 weeks in total in Washington on the Hill, and there is a lot of those applications going through, not only through exemption, but also reclassification that has helped, especially in the 232 realm. Cost increases, obviously sharing cost increases, whether it's your MSRP that you've moved, you've worked with your big box or your retailers and who you're doing there. And then I would push a little bit on the lobbying side, and I think we've been relatively successful in our lobbying attempts, utilizing through the W2C and the resources that we have in Utah, all the way reaching into Washington, D.C., has been very, very helpful. We have some very, very strong senators. We have some wonderful representatives who also have tentacles into the other subcommittees that have been very helpful. So, in a mitigation standpoint, I'm not going to talk about that. I mean, I think we've all beat that to kind of death right now. But again, if there's anything we can do to help or shed light on, happy to. Ben's always been very, very good about working collectively on that with us. So I want to talk about the next one and bring this up. You know, we talked about change management in business school. We've always said, you know, you need to be open to change management. This is going to have a case study written about it around how we are now being faced with a different form of change management, almost forced, not things that we would think about necessarily, but weekly adjustments that we've had to go through. I want to pause on this one as well for everybody on the line. Broker management and calculations. Everyone should be all over this with regard to your broker and ensuring that whatever shipments are coming in has the right calculation. And be a little bit pointed on this one with regard to it because the broker is trying to assess, and I'll give you an example, the value of your steel in your product under the 232. Is it truly calculated correctly in the right kilogram and so on? There are so many mistakes that we are seeing, and I've talked to other people in Washington as well, where brokers just didn't know quite what the application was, for instance, under the 232 and how to apply it. So I would highly, highly encourage people to be with your brokers to make sure that they clearly understand from the HSTC all the way through the annex and all the way through the coding how that should be calculated. There's a lot of dollars sitting there. We talked a lot about also quick versus calculated moves, and some companies by nature have had to be a little bit more quick. Some have been a little bit more calculated. You know, in our business, we have played it, I think, quite well with regard to being calculated. And I still think there is some of that work to be done. As I'd said earlier, there's still pens to be signed. There's still documents to be signed with regard to exemptions, changes, and so on. So I would encourage you that some calculated moves with your representatives through the WTC could impact your business. They are still willing to talk about this, although they say this is our trade policy. I've seen trade policy move through exemptions and exclusions and opportunities that I think we all should be taking advantage of. Preserving and creating optionality. This kind of goes back to a point I made about your country of origin sourcing. Optionality, again, we have seen, I believe, Ben, the tariffs change since it started 27 times in our category. So I think optionality with regard to thinking about what you would do in a different country, but also potentially thinking about how you think about valuing your product at BOM cost versus balance sheet cost. And that's a big deal with regard to thinking about near shoring. If you don't have teams all over the world, if you're not flying people all over the world, if you actually are doing it in the United States, is there an opportunity to cost equalize, for instance, on a 20% tariff that says, you know what, I'm very close now. So I would say creating and preserving that optionality in other countries and other classifications is another one that has been kind of new for us in kind of this nuance of change management. I'd mentioned the balance sheet. Um, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions, Ben, or some pushbacks on the balance sheet question around, is your balance sheet healthy? Can you make these calculated moves? Can you withstand some of this time? I can't speak for everyone, other than I think this is a leading conversation or a leading topic that I want to go into next, which I want to transition now to opportunities. And I'm putting this in an offense and a defense kind of category. We can sit back as we have potentially, and we've been in a defensive mode. We've been taking the punches and we've been trying to mitigate them and we've been trying to lobby against them and everything else. But there's something that we should be thinking about as business leaders. And it's tariffs are there. Tariffs are another situation that we are having in business. And should this focus us or force us to think differently? Not necessarily just the tariff focus, but actually think differently about our business. So when we think about the duty rates, they're starting to stabilize. We know it. We're seeing it as of today, kind of perfect timing. But is there an opportunity in your business? And if you have, 10 to 15 minutes, I'm being a little facetious with your time. However, but to really sit back and go, how do I go on offense? How do I use what tariffs have exposed, meaning they've eroded my margin, they've taken away opportunity with regard to pricing. But wait a minute, is that a business opportunity that you say, I'm going to look deeper into my P&L and how I could potentially reshape that? How do I attack my OpEx? So all of the buzz and everything else that's going on around tariff and everybody's all spun up about it, as a business leader, wait a minute, I'm going to internally focus and say, wait a minute, how do I grow my EBITDA to actually invest when my competitors potentially are going the other direction and they're saying, we're getting eroded, our margins are eroding, we don't know what to do, where a stable, solid leader steps in and says, guess what? Here's what we're going to do with our business, not just to mitigate tariff, but actually to make our business better with regard to, should we be doing things that directly align with this? Should we be making things that directly align with an improved EBITDA status, a greater margin percentage? Should we be doing things like SKU rationalization and SKU rats and saying, do I really need that product that's not performing on the shelf anymore? And make the hard decisions. We always talk about there's sacred cows in our business and there's sacred cows in your business. Maybe there aren't any more sacred cows. Maybe tariffs have taken that shield away, and sitting back with your executive team and your directors and your VPs and saying, we need to go in a different direction because it's right for our business. It's just that tariffs are the launching pad for us to think differently of how we should be going after offensive growth, reshaping our P&L, going after your OpEx and just saying, guess what? We are in different times now because of tariffs, and it's teaching us to think differently. So aligning a strategic plan that actually says, I think just because of this, it's given us an opportunity to really utilize a different way of not only product rationalization, but P&L rationalization. And then obviously, how does that show up on your balance sheet? I had a boss who I love very much, still a very good friend, and he told me many, many times, Phil Poel, do not let a crisis go to waste. And this is a crisis in many companies right now. Don't let it go to waste, but see it through the lens of, I think, really true leadership and what you may be able to do to reshape your business. Tariffs are just put it on the second shelf. Go after what's really in front of you. You know, we talk about things, well, we haven't or we can't do that. Just write it up on the board, why, or we could if versus we can't because. I can tell you that the companies that are taking this direction are going to outpace their competitors. They've used tariffs as a competitive advantage almost to say, this has given us right or given us permission to go in and just carve up our balance sheet, just carve up our P&L to say this is the right way to do business. And now we have permission to do it. So I would leave you with my last minute to say, take your team on offense. Don't play defense anymore. Utah is a wonderful place to do business, utilize the resources we have here through the WTC and collectively through our companies. But walk out of this meeting and go, you know what? I'm not going to be on defense anymore. I'm going on offense and I'm taking my team down that road. So, Ben, I'll turn the screen back over to you and different conversation today, right?
That was great. Thank you, Phil. I like these times can be really challenging, and the motivation behind, hey, don't be on defense, just push forward. I mean, it's a great thing to push businesses on right now. So love the message, love the content.
You bet.
Tiffany.
Well, thank you both, Ben and Philip. This is great to have you guys' insights today, especially on this day, which we've been waiting on for a while now to see what's been happening. But really appreciate both your time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in with us as well. If you missed any part of today's conversation or can't join some of our live events in future weeks, you can always find the full series on our YouTube page. Rayanne has dropped the link in the chat, but also you can go to our website in our events page and you'll be able to find it. We include the YouTube link in there as well. For any follow-up questions or additional information, just feel free to reach out to us by email. And if you're interested in more of our events, visit website, sign up for our newsletter, and follow us on social media. We host a line of regular events and programs throughout the year and would love to see you at an upcoming one. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.